Hey y'all, Bob with Million Mile Garage. My daily driver, the 2002 Maxima, has been making some really large squealing sounds when backing up. Sounds like it's down to the wear indicators on the pads, and I can see why, because they're basically paper thin. Got the caliper pulled off. I also had to basically disconnect the bracket as well because the pads are on there. They're trying to go over the lip that's worn into this rotor, and I just cannot get them over it. That rotor has 181,000 miles on it. It's never been turned. Yep, I'd say that's spent. Brutal. Yeah, right down to the wear indicator. The other problem I got, you see how the rotor's still on there. Just looking back there, it looked like the wear indicator tore up my rotor too bad. I cannot get this rotor off. It is like fused onto the hub. And this is a Florida car, so it saw a lot of salt air about the first, 17 or 18 years of its life till we moved up here about 4 or 5 years ago. Not a big fan of using the big iron mallets like the guys on YouTube show. I'm more afraid what I'm going to do to the wheel bearing than I am the rotor. So here's my method. I did have to tap it with an 8-pound sledge, but I like to torque it up with a gear puller, a really large gear puller in this case, right? And I did kind of bend my shield a little bit. Unfortunately, you can't get the shield off with the rotor in place. And I tension that up just like you would be using like a ball joint remover installer, and then you just have to just tap it with the hammer to break it loose. Same deal. And it's way easier to do it this way. And she's still jammed on there. There we go. Moses. Yep, just rusted right on there, right around that hub. Moving around the other side, I already took the hardware out, but you can see everything in place. I'm just going to show you what I've been doing. I just had to pry up with a pry bar to get this thing get the pads to go over the lip. I just cannot get it to come off. You know, it's got that automatic brake adjuster thing, you know, where you need the cube thingy to screw the piston back into its bore. Not quite sure how that works. I never had one of those all the way apart, but it is really, really tight. Typically, when you don't have a lip worn on the outside of the rotor, usually the pads and the caliper come off a whole lot easier. But I actually have all this floating around. I basically have the caliper unbolted from the caliper bracket, and the brackets unbolted from the suspension. Yeah, it's making me work for it. See, it's just stuck right on there. Obnoxious. Yeah, just showing you the wear indicator. You can see how shiny it is. And this is what it was doing. Oddly, it only did it in reverse. Great. Sounds like I got a bad wheel bearing. Yep. That's what a good one still sounds like. Problem with these semi-sealed bearings is the grease dries up in them, and you can't really repack them. It's kind of stupid. It's got that stupid nut that they paint over. I hate that. So it looks like I'll be chasing down a hub today too. Just showing you right in there, you can see the grease. You can just see it's dried out. So pretty much the oil has pretty much left the carrier, which in this case I think is lithium stearate. So it doesn't have near the lubricity or lubricating properties that it did when the grease was fresh. And that's essentially what makes the bearing go bad. If you could just take those bearings apart and repack them like you're supposed to be able to, the bearings would last the life of the vehicle. All right, here we are, day 2. Napa said they would have the pads in yesterday afternoon when the rotors would be done, and they didn't have the pads. So now we're working on Saturday morning. Rotors turned out good. Napa does nice machine work. No more lip. And there's the pads. Those look good. Problem I had was AutoZone. I ordered the hub from them, and the hub in the box only had 4 lugs on it. So they had to order another one last night. 4 lugs. Can you believe that? So it looks like I got all the hardware to get the job done. I've got this big nut that's peened on. I'm not going to bother grinding on it. I think I can just get it off with this really big breaker bar, this big socket, 30 millimeter. I'm just going to set that on there and lean into it. You see that? Just broke it right loose. It's not going to damage the threads or anything. Got that off, and then hopefully this spindle will come off without too much trouble. Alright, let's get this nut off. If I'm lucky, this won't be fused to the axle or anything. Oh, that never happens. Okay, sure. Yep, and it's noisy. Unfortunately. So, but we got a new one. And it already comes with this is what you call the speed sensor. Teeth are already pressed on. That's a new bearing. Already greased. So it looks identical to this one. So we'll just see if it slides on. Yep, it does. And that one's a lot quieter. Yep, that's a good one. Cool. So I'm just going to torque this nut probably to 150 to 180 foot-pounds. If I got another one, if I got a spare one, I might put a fresh one on and peen it. But I tell you, you put these on tight enough, I really don't see these things coming loose. I don't know why they can't just put a cotter key in there. Beyond me. But anyway, okay, so that problem's solved. So we'll get this thing back together today. Hey, so I was having a little trouble winding the automatic brake adjuster back in. You basically have to kind of screw the piston back into its bore. I got my Allspark cube. Looks like something from Transformers, doesn't it? I temporarily mounted the bracket and the caliper back on the vehicle, basically using the vehicle as a vise. It's very difficult to turn this thing. Probably the right thing to do is to crack the bleeder and push some fluid out that way, but I'm going to be lazy and just push the fluid back up into the vehicle. And it's slow going. Okay, I got the rotor and pads mounted in the caliper mounting bracket. That looks fine. And I probably need to screw that adjuster down a little bit so that the notch on it lines up with the little nipple or locating tang on the bottom of the pad. But other than that, looks good. Sure. Okay, I just snugged it up with just a small wrench. And I'm going to take this really big long breaker bar right here, and we're going to bring it around and torque it up. I don't know if it's going to go past that or not. Usually the bearings, the tolerances are really close. So if I come in here and cinch down on this, that should get this pretty close. Get that lined up pretty good, and that's pretty tight. Pretty long bar. It's probably about 180 foot-pounds of torque they need. I think my torque wrench only goes up to 150, so I'll probably just hook up my torque wrench to that and see if it'll at least click at 150. All right, just for the heck of it, let's see if it'll click at 150. Yep, that's plenty tight. Hey, I did come in and just peen this down a little bit more on both sides, so that is mashed up against the flat. A lot better on this side. There's no danger of that nut coming off. Actually, without it being peened, there's no danger of it coming off. It's like 180 foot-pounds. You're not running any power through it, but I guess the idea is, maybe if this bearing locked up, maybe possibly I could undo that nut somehow, but it'd still be captured by the brake caliper. Anyway, I did it. Hey, just pointing this out. I think that little nub right there, I think it gets received into that notch, so you have to have these notches lined up for this pad to go in and grab it, like so. That little notch on there has to grab into here. I think that's how that thing works, just like that. Hey, just trying to show you all how that little notch lines up with that little nub that sticks out on the brake pad on the back of it. You can see where it's kind of just right inside the end of it there. I think I would have problems getting that pad to seat in if I didn't have it located in one of those 4 notches. So I think you do have to make sure that notch is oriented after you screw that piston back in, so that it's pointing in the right direction to receive that little nub thing. Hey, we took it out and got lunch, went into town, just showing off the sparkly paint. Not bad for a 20-year-old car, huh? I did do probably half a dozen or so, like 45 to 25 pretty firm stops just to try to seat the pads on a little bit. So while we're at it, why don't we take a walk into the shop, and we'll see how the Duster's doing. I may actually get 2 done in one day. All right, let's see how we're coming along in here. Yeah, gasket surfaces look okay-ish. We're about ready to glue this one back together. Sure. Yep, everything's nice and clean down in there. Okay, fine. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe. Hope to see you next time.